Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jason Benites, Oxnard's Chief of Police. The purpose of this appointment item is to provide Council and the public with a verbal update regarding the Police Department. In accordance with Measure M, this update has been pre-recorded. This update is a receive and file item that requires no action by Council. Before I start, I'd like to remind the public that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. As you know, our department has raised over $50,000 for the battle against breast cancer since joining the Pink Patch Project movement in 2018. This year, the Oxnard Police Community Foundation and Senior Officer Maria Pena are facilitating the fundraisers to raise money for Ribbons of Life Breast Cancer Foundation, which is a local nonprofit that provides support to cancer patients as well as raises awareness within our county. First off, at our last presentation in May, we wanted to restate the police department's strategic priorities. And the three fundamental priorities that we have are community safety, which includes addressing crime, traffic, community policing, and neighborhood problem solving, community engagement, and maintaining a culture of success. And as you know, the council has established its own priorities, and those which directly pertain to the police department are maintain 911 emergency response times and to restore community policing. So we keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. The work goes on with our officers. Here we see them just going about their daily duties, and we see a variety of activities ranging from traffic enforcement to our newly created mounted unit, as well as our detectives working to prevent catalytic converter theft, and our officers working with individuals in our community. Here we have a number of other pictures which depict our officers engaging in our community's youth, helping clean up the community, as well as our animal safety officers at work, officers doing their daily duties, and participating in a soccer camp, which was this last July. To start off with, we'd like to first talk about crime. Now, the crime statistics that we are going to talk about are year-to-date statistics. That is, that compare January 1st, 2021 through October 5th, 2021 to the same time frame in the year 2020. These crime statistics are known as the Uniform Crime Reporting Program. This is managed by the U.S. Department of Justice, which collects crime statistics from about 17,000 law enforcement agencies across the country. Our department has been tracking its statistics for the past 5 decades, and these statistics are broken into 2 categories: violent crime and property crime, and each contain 4 separate offenses. I'll go into these a little bit deeper in a moment, but I just wanted to preface this by, at the time of this report, our UCR crime statistics are down by 24.4% in comparison to the previous year. Looking a little bit more closely, we see that violent crime is down 13.3%, but we do see some notable increases in the categories of homicide and aggravated assault. And what I've described in a number of other forums is what I call as the COVID thaw-out effect. And as we were in the year 2020, a lot less activity out in the public and on our streets lended towards a natural reduction in violent crime. Last year, Oxnard only had 6 homicides, which is 6 too many, but it was a record low for almost the past 2 decades. And as we get further along in time, we are now back to what we also refer to as returning to the mean. So that is, we're back to where we were in non-COVID years. In typical years, we usually see between 12 to 15 homicides per year. The same applies for aggravated assaults. We do see a slight uptick with that, with a 7.6 increase year to date. And this crime category includes such offenses as stabbings, non-fatal shootings, and other types of beatings, usually with some type of implement or weapon. In looking at the property crime picture, this is where the majority of the crimes are reported, generally making up at least 60% of Oxnard's crime picture. And the categories under the property crime division are burglary, larceny, which is known as theft, auto theft, and arson. And as you can see, 3 of the 4 categories are down significantly. One thing to note is we are seeing an uptick in catalytic converter thefts. Now, these devices are placed underneath vehicles, and they're removed by thieves who are seeking them for the metals that are contained inside this instrument. What we're doing here, as you can see on the photo on the right, is that we are making efforts to help deter this by marking catalytic converters. So the picture that you saw a moment ago showed some of our detectives actually marking some of these catalytic converters with an OXPD stamp. It's one way to help keep that crime rate down. In terms of arson, there's a lower number of cases, so a few cases can have a greater impact on the percentage change. And as I mentioned in my May presentation to the council, we had a couple of serial arsonists that were setting a number of fires earlier this year, and this skewed the statistics because each was responsible for at least a dozen crimes. And by the way, both were caught. Traffic safety, big priority for us. Now, our priorities that, given our resources, we have told our officers and directed our workforce to focus on dangerous, distracted, and impaired drivers. Those take the absolute highest priority in our traffic enforcement. But as you can see, we do have some prevailing complaints which relate to speeders, which is dangerous driving, loud vehicles, which is more of an equipment violation, but it lends towards the disturbance of the peace, as well as school zone safety. So we've added those into our efforts. As of October 6, 2021, the department has written 2,554 speed-related citations to motorists. We've issued 264 muffler or exhaust citations. Very importantly, we've issued 1,339 cell phone or texting while driving citations. During the course of the year, in addition to surveying various school zones, we have done 15 school zone enforcement operations. And in terms of dealing with the impaired drivers, we've had 444 DUI arrests as of October 6th. Now, looking at injury and fatal collisions, this is the area of great concern. I put the 3-year trend on this slide, though we are at 415 for the year. The 2020 number was 878. And as we know, during COVID, we also saw a very noticeable uptick in drivers that were exceeding the speed limit. So we're at 415 for this year. This compares more to 2019 if we look at 2020 as being kind of an outlier year where we had 1,049 injury collisions. But looking at the fatal collision picture, we're at 12. Now, a breakdown of this: 6 involved vehicles, 1 involved a motorcycle, 3 involved a bicycle, and 2 have involved pedestrians. And when you look at this from the state picture, the California Office of Traffic Safety, also known as OTS, ranks cities based on their population size as to how they stand in terms of injury or traffic collision categories. Oxnard is in a category amongst 59 cities that range between 100,000 in population up to 249,999 persons. And being number 1 is not the best. We are consistently over the years towards the top. And as you can see here, we are second out of 59 for fatal and injury collisions, second out of alcohol involved collisions, more towards the middle in terms of motorcycle related collisions, 20th regarding pedestrian involved collisions, and 15th regarding bicyclist related collisions. Now, of note, these statistics are based on the year 2018, which are the most recent statistics that OTS has. Overdoses. You may recall a few years ago when Chief Whitney was in front of the council, as well as a number of different venues, speaking towards the opioid epidemic. And when he was speaking at this time, 64,000 people per year were dying of drug overdoses in the United States. That number has sharply increased and is still continuing to trend upwards as to 93,000 people lost their lives last year due to drug overdoses. Now, looking at the Oxnard picture, during the year 2020, officers responded to 226 overdose calls, and per the medical examiner, 52 of them were fatal. And we compare that with this upward trend to just this year. Just this year, as of from January 1st to the end of September, officers have already responded to over 205 overdose calls, 25 of which were fatal. And we still have 3 more months to go. Overdoses have become a regular response by our officers, where we'll see our watch commander's log for the day. We'll have sometimes as many as 3 or 4 overdose responses by our officers, which also means that our officers are applying naloxone to those persons that have overdosed. And so to give you an idea how often we have used this drug, we've administered this drug, which is also known as Narcan. Last year, 17 applications. This year, for the first 3 quarters of the year, we are already at 49. So when you look at all the fatal incidents that have occurred within in Oxnard within the past 3 years, we drew a graph here to just kind of illustrate the severity, how the opioid epidemic and overdoses are overshadowing both traffic collisions that result in fatalities as well as homicides. As you can see, in 2019, the overdoses were significantly lower, and you can see by the blue bar that they've gone all the way up to 25. So by the time we've gotten to the year 2021 year to date, the sum total of traffic collisions and homicides are the same. This is very unfortunate. And last year, the sum total exceeded those other 2. One thing that's coming to our department, it's very new, is the collection of stop data. Now, this is based on the Racial and Identity Profiling Act of 2053, known as AB 953. What this does, it mandates law enforcement officers to complete what is known as a stop report or a RIPA report after any contact with a member of the public that results in either a detention or an arrest, or any contact resulting in a search. Now, officers are required to begin collecting for agencies our size as of January 1st of 2022. So we are currently in the process of implementing training, as well as an app that's on a phone that will allow our officers to create a RIPA report right after these stops. What happens is by October 11th, we should be undergoing a soft implementation so that our officers are trained up and actually have developed proficiency at completing these reports prior to January 1st. What we're seeing is these reports at some agencies can take several minutes, and with some skills developed through repetition, our officers are able to complete these reports relatively fast. But to give you an idea, the way this works is that the officer, after making a stop, fills out a series of questions that relate to the officer's perception of the race and identity of the person that they stopped. And so in doing this, say an officer stops a car with 4 people in it and say searches or detains 3 of those 4 persons. At the end of the stop, the officer would therefore have to complete 3 stop reports rather than just 1. So it's a lot of repetitive activity that requires some skill to develop. We will start collecting as of January 1st, 2022, and our public, we release this information to the Department of Justice, and by the spring of 2023, this information will be made public. Technology is also a big part of what we do, and we've been very fortunate that we are have been able to improve some of our technology that we use in day-to-day work. The first one here I'd like to speak about has to do with our body-worn cameras, which we've had since the year 2016. As time has gone by, additional improvements have been brought in, and different technologies have developed that actually enhance the body-worn camera. What I'm talking about here is axon signal. As you can see here, if you look at the pistol in the holster on the left of your screen, you'll see a device with an Axon logo on it. That is a device that will actually record anytime the pistol is removed from a holster. It will automatically activate the camera for that officer. And the same goes for the taser, which you see on the right. There's a new version of taser that has come out by Axon, and when that taser is discharged with a pull of the trigger, it will also activate the officer's body-worn camera in the event that they had forgotten to activate it, or if they're encountering something very quickly and did not have the time to activate it. There's another feature that allows when the emergency lights of a police vehicle with the Axon Signal equipment, that it will activate the body-worn cameras of all officers within a 30-foot radius, regardless of whether they intentionally activate it or not. This radius is actually shown to be up to 50 feet. And so it's very simple how these things now interact and help our officers use these cameras to the best of their ability. The body-worn cameras, they are costly, but they have proven to be a very valuable tool in law enforcement. I've mentioned this, we've been using them since 2019. Drones, we are still operating our UAS team, and as of October 5th, our drone team, our UAS team, has completed over 60 missions. And this ranges from some of the missions you see to the lower right of your screen. They consist of tactical assists, which mean that during SWAT search warrants or SWAT warrants or SWAT activities, the drones are placed up ahead. They've done the same for patrol in helping with things such as perimeter control. Now, for example, if you look to the left of your screen, you can see a video that we released a few months back after our last update that show a drone flying over an area where they're looking for a suspect. The drone was able to locate this suspect and watch him hide in a shed. So that allowed the officers to safely deploy and to set up to take him into custody, knowing exactly where he was. Some other functions that the drones have served involve traffic collision investigation, which is when we have a major traffic collision, the drone can actually map and diagram the area. Traffic safety and enforcement. If you look at the picture right above where you see the crosswalk safety operation in progress, the drone would actually park above the crosswalk while officers were waiting right around the corner. And when they saw a violation, they would let the officers know, and they would call the motorcycle officers in to issue the citation. We found that the drones were very invaluable with fireworks enforcement this year, and we were able to issue a significantly higher number of citations this year than in any previous year. As far as crime scene investigation, like traffic collisions, we park the drone over a scene and it will also map or diagram that. And we've also used the drones for some special operations in helping with the cleanups at Ormond Beach, as well as the Santa Clara River. And we've also used them at special events this year, most notably the Dallas Cowboys training camp. Faro. Faro is something used by our traffic unit. The traffic unit uses a Faro 3D laser scanning system to enhance and update our department's abilities to document and photograph scenes, which include major and fatal collisions, any officer-involved collisions, or other crime scenes. These enhanced efficiencies from this technology allow our investigative units to present very thorough investigations to prosecutors for use in criminal cases. And as you can see, the device here on the left, this is just a very sample video that we show that shows what the Faro can do. And this is just a very general overview of a scene that was mapped by the Faro device. These were acquired through some grant funding, and we are actually in the process of applying for a smaller handheld Faro, which will allow us to get into smaller confined spaces. And that was on an upcoming grant through the Office of Traffic Safety. Lastly, on technology, just wanted to speak to the license plate readers, automated license plate readers, also known as ALPRs. We currently have about a dozen of them in place on our patrol units, and what they do is they collect data related to license plates. And what this does is it allows us to quickly locate stolen vehicles or vehicles that are associated with a crime that we are looking for, and it is an invaluable tool in solving crimes. We are hoping that in the coming months that we will be able to deploy stationary ALPRs across our city. And so with that, I will return to the City Council likely in December to provide the council of an update of what these devices are and what they do. We see them as a very, very beneficial piece of technology that can help make our community safer. Staffing. Staffing continues to be one of the biggest challenges with our department. And I used this graphic last time, and I think it illustrates things very clearly, is that we have our priority of maintaining 911 response times, as well as enhancing and restoring our community policing resources, largely depends on staffing. Patrol division is where our first responders are, and we have to place great priority on adequately staffing that prior to being able to staff our neighborhood policing team. As it stands, as of October 12th, the department will have 10 vacant positions, vacant sworn positions. Now, this is in addition to 24 injured or mod duty officers that are off of work or are working on a desk on a light duty assignment because of a condition or an injury. We have another 18 officers that are in some form of training, with 9 going to the October Academy. They're about to start in a week or two. And we currently have 9 officers in our field training program, 5 of which had just graduated from the academy that graduated last week. So in other words, to get to where we need to go is we need to close that vacancy gap. We need to get these officers through the training program, and in order to be better poised to maintain our 911 response times, as well as to reinforce and restore our community policing. These are both very big priorities, but hiring officers is a very slow process. And as we've mentioned before, it can take up to 18 months to get an officer from the time of application to the time where they are actually functioning on their own. In this picture, you can see these are the 5 officers that we swore in last week and graduated from the academy last Friday. So congratulations to all of them. And below you, these are 6 of the officers that we've hired throughout this year being sworn in. But a little bit about this. So I mentioned that of the 18 that are in training, 9 are going into an academy, and the other 9 are in some form of field training. But to illustrate how frustrating hiring and recruiting can be, which is actually it's a statewide issue, is that we're not seeing the application pools that we used to. And let me give you an example of how few people actually successfully navigate through the application process. This was a recent process where we are seeking to actually send a number of officers to a 3rd academy in Orange County, rather than rely on the 2 local academies that begin in April and October of each year. We figured that the only way we will break out of our staffing issues is by speeding up the pace and sending officers and recruits to more academies. So we had a recent testing process. Now, we received 144 applications. Now, when it came time to actually show up for the test, only 44 showed up. Now, of that number, 19 passed the test. And so our staff interviewed those 19, and as it stands today, only 4 out of those 19 are continuing into the process. Now, once they get through this process, there's a chief's interview, which is where a conditional job offer is given. But then after that, they have to pass a psychological assessment as well as a medical exam, and then they can start the academy. And the academy, there's some attrition rate in the academy as well. For example, the 5 officers that graduated from the academy last week, that was originally a class size of 10. So I'll close by just saying that great work doesn't happen by accident. We have some really great employees here at our department. I'm very proud of the work that they do every day. The things that they do are amazing. I encourage you to follow them on Facebook. We try to do officer profiles of where our officers are, what they're up to, and where they come from, and what their stories are. We have some really great people in our department, and my hats go off to them. Appreciate all the support that we get from our community. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.